So this is the outside really quick.
Volunteers here at the Reformatory. I've been volunteering here for 6 years, so welcome to State Reformatory. Like he said, we're a 501c3 not-for-profit, so that means that all the money that comes in here goes towards restoration and preservation, so thanks for coming in today. Just a couple of things I want to go over with you. Number one, there's a lot of paint chips and a lot of dust here in the building, so please make sure you're washing your hands. There is a bathroom outside next to the parking lot. There's also another one inside the building next to the cell blocks. I'll show you where that's at a little bit later, okay? But there is bathrooms inside here. Number two, please take pictures wherever you want to inside the building. The only thing that I ask you not to do is please do not go up to any windows that face the active prisons behind us and take any pictures. It is a federal offense if you get caught. I don't want anybody going to the pokey tonight. We do have a cop here, but it's just to make sure that we all keep it nice and even, and we're not going to be having any issues with yelling and screaming and stuff like that. So I just want to make sure I tell you that. Believe it or not, we have about 5,500 neighbors in our backyard. I look at them like a baseball outfield. In left field, you've got Mancy. Mancy stands for the Mansfield Correctional Institution. That is a maximum security prison out there. They do have rapists and murderers and guys who committed manslaughter. They did have a prison escape about 2 years ago. I've got footage if you guys want to go ahead and look at it a little bit later on my iPad. You'll be shaking your head the whole time on how they got caught, but we'll go into that a little bit later. They used to have death row over at Mancy, but now death row is over in Chillicothe. Center field, you've got the farm. It's a halfway house for guys going back in society again. And then directly behind us is Ricky. Ricky stands for the Richland Correctional Institution. That is a medium security prison, so you'll see guys on the yard doing lots of various things. In fact, I had somebody that told me today, yeah, we tried waving at the guys back there, but I don't think you used all 5 digits when they were waving back. Before I get started, I asked for the master key. We're going to go in the electric chair room before we get started. Nobody else has got this key except me. So, also, personally, myself and 2 other people helped pick up the electric chair 3 years ago to go ahead and bring it here. So the replica is actually in Toledo, so this is the real deal. I have 315 inmates that I've researched on my own, just to see what kind of people actually pay their debt to society in here, including 3 women. So I've got some pictures and a couple of stories to share with you as well. Just a little bit of an FYI. This is the only time we're going to be allowed to go in this room during the hunt, which kind of sucks, but that's just the way the rules are. Suggestion: if you do end up trying to ghost hunt over here, this is not a bad place to go. But the last couple times I've been in here, upstairs has been a lot more active than down here. Why? I have no idea. No idea. So even if you stand outside over here, you're pretty much a lot closer to the electric chair out here in the hallway than you are when you're standing in the room. Just to let you know. Around the corner, you can eyeball it if you go in there. If you've never been in here before, we actually have the original switches, which they did press when they were going ahead and execute inmates. There's 3 switches. In fact, the warden would come in about an hour before the execution, disassemble 2 out of the 3 switches, so the executioners had no idea which one actually did the deed. And that's something that the warden typically took to the grave too. That's not something he shared with anybody else. So just a little did that. Oh, I've got keys to my home and keys to my car. I don't have keys to the reformatory cells if you guys get locked in. It's happened before, so I want to make sure I tell you, we do not have a locksmith here on site. If we have to call somebody up here in Mansfield, it is a Saturday night, you will be stuck with the bill. So I want to make sure I tell you guys that. So you can go into the cells, you can take pictures, just don't try to be funny and try to lock somebody in. They'll be here for the night, the toilet and sinks don't work either. But I just want to make sure I tell you. How many of you here for the first time never stood foot in this place before? Higher, come on. About half, okay. How many of you have been here before? Quite a few. Okay, well, welcome back. Just to give you, I'll try to give you a real quick synopsis of the Reformatory for those of you who have not been here. Ohio State Reformatory was built in 1886, then in 1896. The reason why it took 10 years is because they ran out of money. So they enforced a Scott law to help pay for the rest of the construction of the building. Facility was for first-time offenders between 16 and 30. The younger offenders went over to Lancaster, and the older offenders went over to the Ohio State Pen. So when you came here, you were pretty much a low-level offender. You got caught stealing chickens or horses, writing bad checks. Originally, the west cell block was built first, the east cell block was built second. The cells are completely different as far as the construction goes. We'll go into that a little bit later. Probably the thing that probably was the cause of the inmates being the way they were was in 1930. There was a fire at the Ohio State Pen. Don't get this place in the Ohio State Pen confused. Ohio State Pen is in Columbus, where the Blue Jackets play their hockey games at. Ohio State Pen caught on fire in October of 1930. In October of 1930, in a prison escape that went amok. I'll go into that a little bit later if you guys want me to, after the tour's over with. But basically, 2 cell blocks caught on fire, and more inmates died in that fire than died in that chair. The state had nowhere to put the inmates, so they brought them here. We're talking about professional criminals, murderers and rapists, and guys committed manslaughter. Now they're sharing space with guys who got caught stealing chickens and horses and writing bad checks. This place got dangerous real quick. By 1950, this place had a surge in suicide, assaults on guards and on inmates. By 1970, it was more of a maximum security prison than a reformatory. When you came here as a reformatory prisoner, you had a Bible in your cell, you had a trade, you were taught, and then you had an education. By the late 1970s, there was a class action lawsuit against the state of Ohio from the inmates that were here because anything that was considered to be state-of-the-art in 1896 was very old school. So they ended up winning their lawsuit in 83 to try to shut the place down. 86 is when they were supposed to go and shut the place down, but they didn't because they had to wait for the Mancy prison to be built first. So this place didn't close until December 31st of 1990. 155,000 inmates came through these doors, and that's pretty much the end of the first half of the story. The floor that you're skating on, the tile is all original, as well as the trim of the baseboards you see over here because the inmates helped make this stuff. Okay? Any questions about this? This is the Ohio Penal Museum, the first floor of West Admin. It used to be just a bunch of places we would keep stuff, but now it's deemed the Ohio State Penal Museum, so we got a lot of artifacts from around the state that we're going to get. Somebody asked me, we're going to get some stuff from Lucasville. Wish we could, but there's 5 guys locked up now at the Ohio State Pen over in Youngstown that are on death row, so anything historically related is related to evidence for them, so we have to wait till they pass away before we get that stuff over here from Lucasville right in 93. So, just an FYI. We probably won't be able to fit everybody in that room. So, I'll do my best to try to make sure that I can try to keep it informative so you guys can kind of see the electric chair if you've never seen it before. Yeah, that's all I'll go with that. You guys ready to go?
Yes.
You will?
Yes.
Okay, I need you to give me a number between 1 and 315, and I'll tell you something about somebody that died in the chair.
257.
Okay. The guy you chose was a guy with 2 first names. His name is John Thomas. He is an African-American gentleman who murdered 2 cops.
Whoa.
And that's him.
Oh my. Wow.
One thing that I found is that a lot of the inmates are dressed up in a shirt and tie, almost like they're dressed for their funeral. The only thing I can think of is that they were pronounced guilty. They were taken in another room. They got their picture. That's why these guys look a little bit upset at the world. Let me back up here for my very first person to be executed in the electric chair is a guy's named Willie Haas. This is him, Cleveland, Ohio. Unfortunately, he had a cell he had to share with, and a guy named William Wiley. This is him. 2 guys named William, stuck in the same cell block, Ohio State Penitentiary, downtown Columbus. They just switched from hangings to electric chair. The guards had no idea which one was going to go first. So what do you think the guards did?
Flip the coin?
Flipped a coin. So unfortunately, Willie lost, and he went first. 17 years old. Raped his boss's wife, tried to go ahead and shut her up by trying to cut her throat. Yeah, real upstanding human being. Probably the worst reformatory, the worst electric chair documentation I've seen as far as a botched execution goes to number 13. His name's Mike Schiller. Mike was in prison for murdering his wife, but he was smoking a cigarette, went to go sit in the chair, flipped the cigarette out and said, "I thank you for your kindness and everything." And then he just basically accepted the fact that he was going to pay his debt to society. They hooked him up into the chair. At the time, they had different protocols for his execution as far as amperage goes. When they hooked him up to 900 volts of electricity for 45 seconds. He passed out. and the guards thought he was dead. They took him off of the chair, put him on a gurney, and the doctor comes over and says, he's still alive. Put him in the chair a second time, zapped him for 900 volts again for 45 seconds, put him back on the gurney again. Guys, he's still alive. Put him back in the chair a third time, 1750 volts for a whole minute. And then they took him off the chair, and then they said, okay, now he's dead. The last person to be executed was a guy named Donald Reinbold in 1963. So this has not been used since the 60s. So somebody says, oh, we should bring back the electric chair. This thing has been retired in 2002 and it will not go back into society again. This is a picture of the Death House, the Ohio State Pen in Columbus, where it used to be on the corner of Spring and West Streets. If you want to go and check it out, there's pictures online. And then here's a black and white picture I found from the Historical Society and also with the Franklin County Library. And this is what it used to look like back in the Ohio State Pen. If you notice, the gallows are right above the electric chair. That's not a mistake. In fact, when they did hangings, they did them in the county that you did your crime in. And we did have a hanging where they had the rope too long. The inmates' legs were broken. They marched them back upstairs, and they shortened the rope, and they did it again.
Wow.
So that's the way we rolled back in Ohio back in the day. The mask is 100% real. That's what they used to use back in the day. The shoulder clips and the armor strengths are also original as well. The reason why they have the metal on there is because we used to have leather straps on there and it got really nasty, smelly. And we had a trustee that said, why are you guys using leather for? You guys should be using metal. I mean, it's going to conduct electricity a lot better. So he gave the idea to go ahead and change around the electric chair so it'd be a little more productive. So he ended up getting paroled, and then 5 years later he was back in prison again for murder, and he helped die in the chair that he helped make. His name, you ready for this? Charles Justice. No kidding. That was his name. So yeah. So this is pretty much the area that I really like hanging out with during the day. Unfortunately, I cannot be here at night. So,
What's with the phone? Is that
the phone was because they just wanted to give you an idea that they did have a phone there in the death house in case there was a reprieve from the governor.
what I thought?
And they've had a couple of cases where they had somebody that called at the last minute and they said, hey, it's the governor, take him off the chair, we're going to give him a week and see what happens. And they executed him about a week or two later.
See, it could just be heartbreaking.
So yeah. So they didn't do any executions here at the Reformatory, but we did have inmates here that did pay their debt to society and they did die in the chair. So yeah. Any questions about this area?
What is that gate? Is that a gate?
That gate there is actually from somebody that came here about last year for the Halloween event that we have here in the fall. And he came to one of us and said, hey, I've got one of the doors from a door over at the Ohio State Pen in Columbus when they're trying to sell the scrap metal. Do you guys want it? And we're like, yeah. So we had it painted and powder coated. This sucker must weigh a couple 100 pounds because they had to put really thick trusses on the wall. So this is actually one of the doors that they had to kind of represent the type of cell door that they had at Ohio State Pen. Here's your stupid trivia for the day if you ever go to Columbus. There's a restaurant in the Nationwide District area called Buca de Pepo's. It means Bob's Basement.
Right.
Bob's Basement.
I live in Columbus.
It means Bob's Basement in Italian. If you go face the front door to the left, there's an alleyway. If you go down the alleyway, there's the exact same door that's on one of the walls. That's the only evidence of prison being in downtown Columbus, and it's still there.
Except for the parking garage, that's Nationwide Arena, is haunted.
Yeah.
It is very haunted.
You're the second person to tell me that.
There.
So yeah. But yeah, just want to make sure I shared that with you guys in case you've never been here before. So.
That's cool.
All right, gang. You ready to go and get out of here?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's pretty warm.
That's very good. Very cool.
Awesome.
We're just getting started.
Yeah.
Yay. We love it. I didn't know this was all that easy. Really cool.
You have it.
Turning it loose.
Facebook.
They will later.
Oh, yeah.
Come back in September, and then me and him came back in May. We got worked up on that company. Cool. That's not that far from
Kind of cool to get
My
this on
plan
the
is
light.
to tell you guys a lot of history about the building, also some paranormal stuff. Joe is a lot better ghost hunter than I am, so I'm going to let him go ahead and talk a little bit too. He doesn't know that yet. All right, welcome to the East Cell Block. For those of you who have never been here before, East Cell Block is the largest tiered cell block in the world, meaning if you take the ceiling and the walls off, it'll still stand straight up. There are 100 cells per level, 6 levels altogether, so you can fit 1,200 inmates just in this cell block alone. The size of the cells over here are 7 by 9. This is the Motel 6 over in Mansfield, Ohio. I mean, they're really tiny. If you go over to the West Cell Block cells, those are 9 by 11. That is the Ritz-Carlton. And they have windows, yes. If you pay attention to what the facility is, it's kind of a little bit of a Gothic, like a Gothic style on the inside. On the outside, when you guys came in here for the first time, if you've never been here before, what was your reaction when you came in here?
Victorian.
Victorian, yeah. So it's kind of shaped after the Chateau de Marmont over in France. That's kind of what it looks like. Just a kind of little similarity, though. This cell block was the last one built of the two, so this one was finished around 1910. That one was finished right before it opened up in 1896. We did have some different types of, well, let me talk about the other things that are down here. When you go all the way down to the very bottom level, that's the East Shower. We're going to go here in a second. On the second level, where that exit sign is at, that is where the second hospital used to be at. So when somebody says, hey, where do I go to the hospital? I'm like, well, which one? Because there used to be 3 of them. The first one is above the chapel, the second one is down over there, and the third one was out back. So the one out back got torn down, but those are the 2 that you can go to as far as hospitals go to. On the very top level is the law library. You can go up there as well, but it was also part of the hospital back in the day. You do not have access to the commissary area, you know, the toilet room from Ghost of Princess, if you've ever seen that before, so you don't have access to that room is locked up. Lockhart cell. For those of you who do not know, we had about 4 inmates that did commit suicide by either putting paint thinner or gasoline on themselves, lighting themselves on fire because they were allowed to go in and smoke in their cells. They lit themselves on fire and killed themselves and committed suicide in their cells. The most notable one is James Lockhart. He's on the 4th tier. On this side, we're on the Cleveland side of the state. He's in cell number 13 on the 4th tier. So if you go to the 4th tier, go 13 cells in. There's a little piece of laminated paper on the side of the cell door. That's the cell that he passed away with in the 1950s. Like I said, he was one of about 4 other ones that did as well, so he's not the only one. We did have some segregated inmates here, depending on what decade you were here. The last inmate I was talking to was here in the 70s. He told me that on the top tier, the 6th tier was for the Aryan Brotherhood of the Skinheads. The 5th tier was for the Black Gangster Disciples or the Black Panthers. The 4th tier on this side was for the Latino gangs. The 3rd level on this side was for the transgenders. And on the 2nd and the 1st level were either from inmates from the Ohio State Penitentiary, guys doing life in prison, or guys on death row. That's on this side. On the other side, same thing on the 6th, the 5th, the 4th. The 3rd tier was for new guys coming in. Then the 2nd level and the 1st level were for death row inmates, guys in solitary confinement, or guys from the Ohio State Penitentiary. So I asked him while he was here, how noisy did this place get in the summertime or even in the wintertime? He said, imagine trying to sleep in a sleeping bag on the 50-yard line of the Ohio Stadium during an Ohio State football game. It was like this 2 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock at night. One little game I do enjoy playing for those of you who are getting kind of bored and everything looks kind of the same after a while. Start at the very top of the 6th tier. One person in your group is going to be the honor person, so you're going to give the honor person your cell phone, your flashlight, your digital camera. And what are the 3 best things to take with you on a ghost hunt? What you see, what you hear, and what you feel. You do 1 lap all the way around by yourself. I get my stuff back, and then it's your turn. And then you do a lap all by yourself, and I hold your other stuff. So if the cells seem kind of the same after a while, you're getting kind of bored, it's about 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, try that out and see how it goes.
We were up on the 6th floor the last time we were here, or 5th floor, and got touched up.
Really?
So, yeah.
Nice. Okay, let's go take a shower.
Real quick, one of the reasons that I'm in here is to show you guys how to use these. Okay, these are dowsing rods, and you usually don't see these on those kind of shows, because my standard joke is because they probably don't require a battery. That's why you don't see them. They've been used for thousands of years to find water, gas company guys here, I don't trust my gas lines, but they will pick up on spiritual energy. So if you walk into a large space and you've got these out, if there's somebody there, they will cross. Okay?
Did you just do something?
No, I didn't do a thing. It's the 11 guys in here who did it. So let's say you walk into a large space, you pick up on somebody. There may be more than one. So fellas, can you go ahead and count off for them, please? Okay. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Now, these are on a shaft. I can't turn these. And I'm not, doing anything. They're turning, they're working. There are 11 of them in here. And basically, they like, they're part of, they want to let you know how to talk to them. Okay? Because they one thing that's really they wanted me to make really clear is they hate talking about their time in the prison. They don't want to talk about, where they worked, all the stuff that happened here is pretty bad. They don't like to talk about it. These guys, I started talking to them about 11 years ago now, and what got me started, what really got them interested was I asked if they like baseball.
Is that a yes?
Oh yeah, if they cross, it's a yes. If they cross that big, it's a yes. If they stay parallel, it's usually a no. If they go further apart, it's a big no. Now, the first one I started talking to was Mr. Anderson. When I asked him if he liked baseball, okay. So I said Cleveland Indians. Toledo. Cincinnati. He hates Cincinnati. He really does. I finally just blanked out my head and I kind of said, you tell me. And I don't know why the Brooklyn Dodgers jumped into my head. He's a Dodgers fan. I have told him they moved to Los Angeles. Yeah. Which he actually thinks is pretty stupid. It's like seriously. The rest of the guys in here are all Indians fans. And they were really excited when they made it into the World Series 2 years ago. They were really excited. But I'll tell you what, your phones, if you can pull up video, that is a tremendous trigger. These guys love watching video. Pull up some YouTube, but they're real interested. Yeah. Now, I had to sort of, they've all learned that, those big square things in your hands are phones, but there are also many computers. So they love video. They want to talk about, what's going on in the world. And basically, so my best advice, talk to them like they're guys. Talk to them like they're people. Yeah, these guys are they really want to, don't talk to them, ooh, they're scary or they're spooky or, no, just talk to them like they're guys. You say you're sitting down at a bar, next to them, and, do you say, hey, were you ever a prisoner? You never ask that. You're like, hey, what do you think of those Indians, So yeah, pull up some video, you'll get their attention. Okay? If you want to practice with these, try it over a bottle of water. Okay, to try to get the feel for them. They are available, they're going to be rented out. So yeah, go ahead and just practice with them over a bottle of water to kind of get the feel. Normally, if we had more time, I would have let let some people try them out. The fellows would have helped you out. Now I'm going to be up in the archive room. I'm the archivist. I'll be up in the archive room, which is about in the front center of the building. If you see a door with a light on, and you need help, you have a question, you don't know where to go, knock on the door. We're watching National Treasure tonight, so we'll have movie night afterwards. Was Twister? Yeah, Commission and Wonder Woman. Really like Wonder Woman. Yeah. Oh well, she's just so darn cute. She just is adorable. Yeah. So tonight we're watching National Treasure. Yeah, I'm sort of going different genres. They don't like westerns because they always had to watch those in prison. They don't want westerns. Hate John Wayne, and they don't like gangster You guys tell me what you think of Shawshank. I think it's because it's all anybody ever talks about, and they're sick of it. However, the other thing that's interesting, you know, Batista and Stallone were here in the fall filming, and somebody asked one time, you know, what did they think of Sylvester Stallone? Ooh, they don't like him. But they like Batista. They thought Batista was cool. And see, these guys were here when Stallone was here with Tango and Cash. And yeah, well, you guys didn't think much of Stallone then either, did you? No. But Kurt Russell, yeah, they like Kurt Russell. So yeah, but well, I know he's just he's another cutie. But anyway, yeah, just talk to them like the guys. But again, you want to practice with these, do it over bottled water, and you'll kind of get the feel of. You'll feel how they're not just flinging or moving. You know, they're moving like they're almost on a magnet. So yeah, and like I said, I'll be up on the second floor. I'll be up there for a while. Knock on the door if you got a question. Okay? Well, you guys have fun tonight. Okay? And use multiple instruments. You don't have to use one thing. Yeah, well, this is going. Have your digital recorder going to, or have have your video camera going. Have some multiple things going. Because when somebody was using these one time, we were talking to Mr. Anderson, they got these incredible circles of light with the camera in front of whoever was talking to him with these rods. I mean, it was amazing. So, yeah, just try to use multiple things.
I know the guys, when he came the last time, there was one person that the guys didn't like, and I can't remember his name.
Mr. Saltz.
I knew it started with an S.
Mr. Saltz, just so you know, if any of you watched the Ghost Adventures, there was a gal who said, oh, there's a spirit there that attacks women volunteers.
Yeah.
I know the two women who had a problem. And what they were doing, Mr. Saltz was the superintendent of the hospital. This was the second hospital, actually, previously. He was the superintendent of the hospital. 6'7", weighed about 350 pounds in life. And I have actually seen him as a shadow figure there. But he is stuck in his own time. He feels it's 1943. He doesn't see that wall. He sees this as the hospital. And so his office was in that area, and they were going into it. He didn't want them in there, and they kind of weren't listening. So he kind of just, sort of stopped the one. The other said she started to feel sick. Thing is, he's very protective of women. If you're respectful of him, and if you walk into an area and you get the feeling, oh, I'm not sure we should be in here, you get that feeling, listen to that feeling. Because somebody doesn't want you in there. But Mr. Saltz generally is very respectful. He's very protective. A lot of women volunteers, he's actually very protective. So he's not bad, but the inmates don't like him. He's a very low opinion of the inmates. Really hated the inmates. So these guys usually leave if he comes in here, but you'll know when he's around when it's bone-chilling cold. I mean, bone, like you've got your arm in the freezer, cold. So you'll know when he's around.
Somebody asked me a couple months ago at a ghost hunt, when the ghost hunters were here, where the X is on top of one of the cell doors. The group that was here shooting the movie, or shooting the episode of Ghost Hunters, it's right above the door. You can see it right here from where I'm at. So, so you would take a shower one day a week here at the Reformatory. It would always be on Saturday. That way you would smell nice for church on Sunday. So when you came in here for visitation, it was in that room over there. The glass is there to kind of contain the heat in the wintertime and the air conditioning in the summertime. And the visitors got to smell what was in here in the cell blocks, just like the inmates did, and it was not very positive at all, I can tell you that. First of all, if you look behind you, that door that goes into that room right below the exit sign, that is the infamous chair room. Not the electric chair room, it's the chair room. The chair room, it's been said that if you put a chair in the middle of the room, you come back, the chair will be in another part of the room. I've never seen that happen. I don't know where it came from, but I've never seen it happen. But I will say that that room there gets a lot of weird EVPs almost every other ghost hunt. I have no idea why. He was part of the Ghost Adventures people. He was in that room with a former inmate here at the Reformatory as a volunteer, and one of the guys in his group got scratched right in front of him There on YouTube you can see it. So you can probably check it out a little bit later if you want. One other thing I wanted to show you is the infamous Schofield X. I need everybody over there, right over here. Make sure you're not standing in the doorways. The one's not standing in the doorways. If you look on the floor, you'll see that it makes an X. The architect of the building is a guy named Levi Schofield from Cleveland. We think he was part of the Freemasons. So if you open up all four of these doorways right here, it makes an X right here in the middle of the floor. So some people ask, well, how structurally sound is the building? Well, there's the proof right there in the pudding. The middle of the X is still in the middle of the room. Okay? So you got the chair room, Schofield X. Right in here is Brooks's room. And then we're going to go upstairs. Wow. This is actually a pretty cool night for this one. This is the chapel. We did have Protestant and Catholic services here every Sunday. The inmates would be on this level, and believe it or not, there was a balcony that used to be here. You can see some remnants on the walls. Civilians would actually be upstairs, the civilians would be upstairs, and the inmates would be right here on this level. You do have access to the original hospital, what we call the TB ward. If you go through that next door, go 2 flights up, that's the original hospital. If you want to go ahead and see the prison cemetery before it gets dark, this is probably the best place to go. This is probably the best time to go upstairs right now if you want to go upstairs real quick, or we're going to go into the attic right as soon as I'm done going from here to in there. If you go all the way up to the top, go all the way to the corner upstairs, look through the window, don't take any pictures, and you can see two big oak trees and then about 227 tombstones that are out there. In order to go ahead and be buried out in the cemetery, you have to pass away on state property in one of the prisons, and your family does not claim your body. They used to put you in an oak coffin, now they put you in a crematorium coffin, which is essentially reinforced cardboard, and then they went to the Reformatory Cemetery out back. Quick little joke plus a little story to tell. About 2 years ago, we had a ghost hunt like this. We had 4 guys on the tour asking me, how many tombs are at the cemetery? Can you go back to the cemetery? How far away is the cemetery? I'm like, dude, you can't go back there. You're on state property. You'll be arrested. About 2 o'clock in the morning, we got a phone call from one of the COs, the corrections officers over at Ricky. They said, did you guys tell 4 guys they can go back to the cemetery tonight? I'm like, no. Why? Well, we've got them next to the train tracks out back on a prone like it's a felony drug stop in downtown Toledo. You can see that comes up from there. And come to find out, the 4 guys trying to go back to the cemetery were all City of Columbus police in Columbus and said, you're going to be giving up the punishment for these guys, and if I don't like it, we'll call them gun tow. So I don't know what's going on up at Teaching Safety Council, or if they're actually working out in the cruisers, no idea. There are some birds in here, so if you do hear some flapping, that's not us trying to play practical jokes on you. We do have some birds that can get in through the glass. I don't know where they get their food source from, but they know how to get in, and they can't figure out how to get out, so if you're flying around all the time, just make sure you're not standing near some of the joints, because you'll get, if they could not bring you up to the steps, they would take you to the elevator that goes up all the way to the top. Yeah. You done? Cool. And then, like I said, it works better going down than it does. Block. There's not one in the east. So if you go to the attic, you know you're on the west side. Okay? Follow me, come on in.
That like iron, didn't he, Tom?
What's that?
Iron colors everywhere.
Also, just a little quick stupid trivia. How many bricks? So you guys have seen a little bit of the cemetery, or a little bit of the reformatory so far. How many bricks would you guesstimate are in this building?
8 million?
Good guess. A lot more than 8 million.
Wow.
15.
A lot more than 15 million.